Yeah,
Yeah.
gotta be heads up.
What I need.
All right, we're on. Okay, let's go.
That means somebody's ass.
Good evening. Welcome to the public hearing for the adoption of the tentative budget. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, so please join me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No.
I'll do it. We're going to, we do have Commissioner Bussell has called in. He is on the phone to join us today, so we're very glad that he could be with us, at least over the phone. And he has been participating all day. We've been in work sessions since 9 o'clock this morning, going straight through. So hopefully we'll all be ready to move forward on the adoption of the tentative budget, at least this first public hearing, and of course there will be a second public hearing. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Hunsaker.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is the first of two public hearings as required by state statute. We presented the budget to the board at the end of May. We've taken the board through a number of workshops reviewing the budget in a variety of different forms and fashions to take you through those areas that are the most concern. We've looked at the capital improvement program. We've looked at all of the roughly 150 funds. We're here tonight, we've had one public meeting for the public to come in and advise the board back in June. We're now at the statutorily required two public hearings in September, tonight and then next Tuesday night, the 22nd, for the final adoption. After receipt of the July 1 certified tax roll, a balanced budget and a net amount of $549,026,782 was filed with the board records prior to the July 15th statutory deadline. The budget reconciliation session was held on July 30th, which resulted in the Board of County Commissioners voting to maintain the current millage rate. The tentative new net budget, now including $11,283,994 for Port Manatee, to be approved at the first public hearing, totals $563,871,886, which is exclusive of cash balances, non-expendable trust funds, internal service, and internal transfers in prior year project budgets. The gross total for the FY16 proposed budget with amendments, which includes all items shown on the revenue and expenditure side of the budget, transfers, internal services, cash balances, non-expendable trust funds, is $1,163,524,551. For final adoption of the budget, prior year grant and project balances of $182,560,390 and special district budgets of $3,195,375 are added to the gross budget for a final gross total of $1,349,280,316. I just wanted to get all those numbers on the record because we traditionally talk about our net budget. And when it gets to the press leaves out that word net budget. And it appears across the state, and that it's just not the right budget because statutorily the budget is the total budget. That last number I read to you is the actual budget. So with that, I think Jan has some graphs and charts to introduce this final budget. This, I think, what we call the tentative budget. The final budget is what you will deal with next week. And she can take you through that rather briefly, and then we can go to hearing from the public. Jan?
Good evening, Commissioners. What I thought I'd do, since it has been some time since you saw the last overall, is do an overview for you. The purpose of the public hearing tonight, again, is to talk about the proposed budget, the proposed property tax, to hear public comments, and then to finally adopt the tentative, which that goes forward to the next public hearing, and you'll adopt the final. For the requirements by state, the first item of information is to describe the percentage of additional property taxes that will be generated by the growth in the tax base. That's exclusive of growth from new construction, and it's often referred to as the increase in revenue over rollback. In this proposed budget of the Manatee County Board of County Commissioners, the overall tax rates are not increasing. The aggregate increase over rollback percentage is 7.17%, and the aggregate millage rates for FY16 is 6.8488, and the rollback rate aggregate is 6.3906. What I'd like to do is go ahead and go through the PowerPoint presentation, and we'll go through some items very quickly. The first slide you have, again, lists the total budget that's before you, removing any internal transfers, internal service funds, and pulling down to the tentative net budget, which is $564 million roughly. Again, one of the purposes of this meeting is to move from the July 15th, which was $549 million budget, adding tentative budget amendments of $14.8 million, residing in the tentative net budget as of September 15th. Which is $564 million. The highlights of this budget, from a very high level, I thought you'd like to review. Your emphasis of this budget is over public safety, maintenance of assets, improvement of your existing assets, and maintaining your workforce. Those are the highlights. As far as public safety, this budget establishes the new ambulance service in Parrish with the 19th ambulance. It continues the animal service emphasis that you started in FY15 as initiatives. We are meeting requirements for increase in retirement FRS costs. Healthcare will be continued in the community this year for 6.2, and you have investment in public safety capital projects of 19.5. The maintaining of assets, more investment is placed within the budget before you for shell replacement and tree trimming. In addition, you've put extra emphasis within the parks and natural resources of playgrounds and into your preserves. You've also put emphasis in this budget on improving the existing assets that you have. Reinvestment in technology upgrades and software continues in FY16. The transit extended service that you established in FY15 will continue in 16 to Route 6 and the North County Connection Service. You've invested in an urban watershed master planning. The regional traffic management system will expand based upon grants received for extended coverage and traveler information websites. And your investment in your infrastructure improvements have continued in your CIP, which you will be voting on next time, with emphasis again on 44th Avenue. As far as maintaining your workforce, you've added additional positions that have recommended dedicated funding sources, and pay for performance of 4% of salaries is reserved within the budget. Reflecting again on the stress that is happening within your workforce, this chart shows that as the increase, which is the orange line, you've increased 50,000 in population over the last 5 or 6 years, but the representative of your employees per 1,000 has decreased over time down to 4.9. Again, those are the 4 highlights: your safety, your assets, and also your workforce. But I thought you'd like to see some highlights that also are encouragement for your county. You've had an 8.3% increase in property values, although Save Our Homes has kept your tax exemption at 0.8 this year. The county has maintained its 20% reserve policy. You were able to maintain your AA+ and AA2 bond ratings with the issuance this year of debt. And you've got a 2.3 increase from FY15 in funded positions from dedicated funding sources. And again, we still continue to have the population increase since '07. This is the last bit of highlight. Since '08, you've had no total millage increase in your rates. Your ad valorem revenue, however, is still at a 21.5% decrease from where you started in '07. The change in the net budget is a still $38 million decrease, and the workforce has decreased 10.1 since '07. Positively, the taxable property values, again, are increasing. And then I added this slide because I wanted to make sure that everyone was very clear for your constituents that the total unincorporated tax bill remains the same from 15 to 16 with a total of 7.0435. I also had provided you the chart showing the historic countywide millage. I added the black line on top because that is the total countywide millage, including the voted debt. So you can see that it leverages out exactly to 6.4 over in the FY16 year. We also provided you the highlights of the increase from the property values that we received. Total increase was $14 million. It is divided among the constitutional, the existing board expenses that have gone up, proposed debt services is in reserves, and the CRA TIF payments for the total increase of $14 million. To see from a visual perspective, we placed it in with the chart so that you can easily see the items also divided out. Personnel changing from proposed to tentative. There have been 9 increases on the BOCC side, 1 in the Children's Services tax, 1 with phosphate severance tax funding, and 7 through impact fees and program revenues. Once again, there's the review of the budget with the 14.8 change, and we gave you detail as to the specific items that changed. Within the document that we gave you the flag list from the prior time indicating the ones that have been added, which are also listed on there. And that ends our presentation is where we're at. And then these are the next steps that we will need to take. But I wanted to stop in case there's any questions.
Okay, do you have questions? You guys can use your, yep, we got this thing up. So Commissioner Whitmore?
A citizen had asked me about the debt service, the $2.7 million, and I know you all got it today, but Jan was nice enough to send it to me Saturday. And just so for public, only because I asked her the question Saturday and she responded, which was nice on a weekend. But the largest portion of the debt is actually due to the P25 radio system, which is what we're sharing with Sarasota County. But the debt issuance also includes funding for forward funding of the historic courthouse, because we upfront funded it, now we're paying ourselves back. The new buildings with the tax collector and the child protection services, correct?
Correct.
And the jail management system and detention center door upgrades that we have to do yet?
Yes.
Okay. Because a lot of people wanted to know, what's that debt service and, what is it exactly? So thank you for giving me that information.
Yes, sir. On October 13th, we're scheduled to have a session before you to explain debt and all the items associated with it. Those items were brought before you in the CIP and they adopted.
Okay, I wanted to ask a question about the 0.8% Save Our Homes limitation. As I understand that, the Save Our Homes said that there would be a limit on how much your tax bill could go up, even though property values can go up by, what is our property value base gone up by?
15.3. The Save Our Homes has an either or. It's either 3% or the lesser of 3% or CPI, and the CPI is 0.8.
0.8, because I got asked a question that at a Republican club, luncheon club, and I said, well, it's less than 1. I couldn't remember. It was less than 1. And I was told, no, it's 3%. And I said,
No.
I don't think that's correct. And the person asking me actually was a previously elected official, and I said, no, I think that it is less than 1. And so even though the values are going up, the people that have homestead
Right.
exemption and are eligible under the Save Our Homes could only see a maximum increase in their tax bill at this 0.8%.
Correct.
Is that
That's
correct?
true, and that is statewide. And I've been following budgets across the state, and that has gotten very little press, that homesteaded properties across the state of Florida, the value or the taxes can only go up by 0.8%.
So that leads me to believe that this big increase in revenue we have is coming from new construction. Is that correct?
New construction and a combination of non-homesteaded properties and commercial properties.
Commercial, of course. Okay. All right. Any other questions this time?
Is it time to, is this the right time to ask questions of what we have on the current funding sources, or you want to do it later?
We were admonished in another life about not going directly to the public.
Okay,
It's a public hearing, and after the public hearing, we can go to any questions you might
Okay.
have.
Okay. All right, didn't know that. Okay. We'll go ahead and go to public comment. If you'd like to come forward and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to address the board on any issues related to our budget specifically, because this is a budget hearing.
Hello, Commissioners. Hope you guys have some coffee.
We need it.
Turn the mic
Needed
towards
today.
yourself.
I'm sorry.
Turn the mic towards yourself. There you go.
My name is Bob Nicholson. I'm the Vice Chair of your Environmental Lands Management and Acquisition Committee. I'm standing in for Bill Webster, our Chairman, who had a previous commitment. LMAC had a special meeting last night and listened to a couple of hours of testimony regarding the opportunities provided by the Deepwater Horizon oil spill settlements. We crafted a recommendation, but it was too late to get it to you in time for your consideration today. Accordingly, we are here to read our recommendation into the record. Most of you know Ingrid McClellan of LMAC, who will present our recommendation.
So after much discussion, and if you have been a liaison with us, you can know how we go late into the night. But LMAC's belief is that with the Deepwater Horizon oil spill settlements, that Manatee County has an unusual opportunity. Manatee County is blessed with some outstanding environmental lands. They preserve forever the natural old Florida landscapes and coastlines that delight us, our neighbors, and increasingly our visitors. All that has been accomplished is despite the fact that we are unique in another way. Alone among comparable Southwest Florida counties, we have no dedicated millage for their acquisition, restoration, and maintenance. Such jewels as Robinson Preserve exist today because of hard work in securing financing from private sector and from writing government grants. These creative and difficult efforts have saved our citizens millions upon millions of dollars, and careful stewardship left those foregone dollars to remain for other community needs for expenditures. So this brings us back to the financial opportunity before us. The Gulf oil spill was primarily an environmental issue. Using the funds intended for environmental mitigation for that very purpose is reasonable and appropriate, and that includes the so-called business damages settlement funding. The act that authorizes the payment distributions, as you know, is the Restore Act. So we do ask that you please allocate in a fair share of the settlements towards these environmental purposes. Our environmental lands need this help, and future generations of Manatee citizens and residents will be very grateful for your vision. Yours respectfully.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Anyone else who would like to address the board on the budget issues? Now's your time. I do have people signed up too. I suppose I should call you, but come on forward. Then I'll call people that are signed up.
Hello, I'm a citizen of Manatee County, and I take actually the opinion that the people themselves are great stewards of their property they own. And, you know, our country was not envisioned to be owned by governments. They were envisioned for the people to reap the benefit of that ownership of the property. So we look at Duet Preserve. How much money are we spending to send it back to pre-European standards? And what would be the purpose of that? And I know that Charlie Hunsaker did bring that to you and you all did approve it. So you end up spending our tax monies to maintain property that could just as effectively happen with private individuals and not cost the taxpayers. Between the school district and the fire assessments and this board, you tax the people of Manatee County well over $1 billion. The school budget is $671 million, and I'll quote their CFO, they'll spend every penny of it, and so will you. And that's a direct quote from her, that every penny we give, they're going to spend it. And you all do the same thing. I think that at some point, you know, public safety, I really like to talk about public safety because I don't really believe there's a lot of it in this county. I had came across an incident on Friday that a man was attacked by a homeless person who had bonded out on August the 11th from a over $5,000 theft, has no address, and the court let him bond out. And the person that was assaulted by him on Friday couldn't even get an officer to give an incident report. The vagrant tossed gasoline on this person. So we talk about safety. Where is the safety? I think it's only with each individual, yet your goal is to tax. And lastly, I'd like to talk about that port. The port taxes, you've heard me before at this podium. You unlawfully waived the ad valorem taxes for the port. Yes, it did happen. And I've said it, and I believe Mr. Gibolini has said it from this part. You gave people like Del Monte, I think Del Monte can buy all of us in this room, tax abatement for being at the port. They did not pay their ad valorem taxes that they were required to do. And I have mentioned it before, it's clear in present law under the Port Canaveral versus the State Department of Revenue for Florida. Those people should have been paying taxes all along, and they didn't. So you let those guys go, but you come after us, the homeowners, and you want us to support this county. And we want to support it, but at what cost? Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy Grant? Yeah, we can hear you, Larry. You're on record, so careful what you say, unless you want it to be on record.
Hi, my name is Tammy Grant, and I'm the Director of Patient Access at Manatee Memorial and Lakewood Ranch Medical Center. As an employee, the financial counseling, registration, and scheduling all falls under my responsibility, which includes the qualifying process for the County Indigent Program. So I see this need on a daily basis, and as a taxpayer too, I really appreciate the dilemma that you have, and I can see that you're struggling with it because you care and you're trying to do the right thing. So for that, thank you. Because of the program today, that exists today, about 400 times a month, we get to say yes to people that need help. And these are people that I'm willing to bet you know. They've touched you in some way. They're your hairdresser that has a shoulder pain and can't lift her arm anymore. It's the lawn maintenance guy that has a cough that won't go away. It's the waitress that served you last week and today found out she has cancer. These are real human beings. It's not just a line item in a budget. It's not a park bench. It's a person. And I'm really proud and happy of the way we've worked together in the past 15 years that I've been doing this to meet the needs of the community and still be fiscally responsible. And I just urge you to continue funding us so we can continue saying yes to those patients and get them back on their feet and back out in the community. So thank you and good luck.
Ralph Gonzalez, Dr. Gonzalez.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Ralph Gonzalez. I'm an actively practicing physician in the area. I'm the senior managing partner at Bradenton Neurology, and I'm also the chief of medicine at Manatee. I'd like to tell you that as a practicing physician in the community, these funds for the patients who cannot afford insurance and those sort of things are very important for us to be able to manage their illnesses. I work with the COE clinic. We've managed the Epilepsy Foundation Clinic here for over 25 years. That is a pro bono clinic. Patients are seen there for free, as well as being part of the WeCare provider network. I see patients on a regular basis through WeCare and who could not get not just their medications and their labs, but they couldn't get treatments and they couldn't get testing without having these funds available to them. I can certainly see them for free, but I can't do MRI scans, can't do labs, can't give them medications. And without these things, they would fall by the wayside. They fall through the cracks. And I think that we as a community have the responsibility to our citizens to be able to provide those sort of procedures and labs, because if not, they're only going to get worse. The last MS patient I had 2 days ago, she gets her steroids through Manatee. She got her last MRI, which showed continued activity of disease through Manatee. And this is just yesterday. So without these sort of things, I wouldn't be able to check her and see what's going on with her. Okay? So, to be able to have these makes our job easier, and I think ultimately benefits the county, because these patients won't get seen until they're in extremis and at the hospital via EMS or, stuck there in the emergency room. Okay? So I really think that it's hard for the patients. It's also hard for us as physicians, because when we have to not be able to be reimbursed, it's hard to, at the hospital, it's hard to recruit physicians to the area. And that's one of our problems in the area, is we don't have the ability to recruit like Tampa or Pinellas County or even Sarasota. And there's a physician shortage in this county. We've known it for years. And that's why we're doing the residency program and various things. But it's even harder for specialists, because we can't breed our own, so to speak, with the residency program. So it's hard without these funds. And I was just here at the end of the last meeting, and I know everyone here is a pet lover, and we talked about how we want to make Manatee a place for our pets, but we have to treat our citizens as well as we treat our pets. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Christine Manning.
Good evening. Hi, my name's Christine Manning. I wanted to also speak tonight on behalf of continuing to fund the Manatee County Indigent Healthcare Program. As a registered voter living in this county for over 25 years, I am very aware of many people in our community who've benefited from this program. And without these funds available for our residents in need, I am really concerned that our hospitals will instead bear the burden of providing the charity care and will not be able to keep up with the public demands for the best health care possible. As a citizen, I hear healthcare stories all the time, especially from our women residents. And one of the biggest reasons they chose our area is because of the high level of care that our hospitals do provide, as well as the talented base of physicians they have access to. And I really strongly believe that we need to continue to take care of our own, so in the future, our residents, our visitors, our snowbirds will continue to find our county desirable and as one of the best places in Florida to spend their time and their money. The availability of these funds has also impacted me personally. I have a family member who is a homeowner in our county, and at one point he had a successful construction business. He had the bottom drop out on him in the recent financial downturn, and he struggled to keep afloat. Then he became ill, and it was hard on everyone around him to see his overall health decline. He was very stubborn, and because he could not afford insurance, he was not qualified for any governmental programs. He thought there was no help for him. He finally sought care. He was directed to the county program, and he was able to get the care he needed. Today, I'm happy to say he's well. He has a good job. He's been able to qualify for and purchase insurance through the Affordable Health Care Act because he's now working. He's been able to keep his home. He's been able to pay his taxes, all of which may not have been possible if his health had continued to decline. I say kudos to Manatee County for having this program, and I thank you guys, the commissioners, in advance for your continued support in the area of this with our community. I truly believe that this program is saving lives and helping our tax-paying citizens get the care when they need it the most so that they can remain viable, tax-paying, voting members of our community. And thank you very much.
Thank you. John Peters?
Thank you very much. My name is John Peters. I'm a pulmonary critical care physician practicing in Manatee County now for about 20 years. I've worked in all three of the hospital facilities in Manatee County, Blake and Lakewood Ranch and Manatee Memorial.
All right, we can hear you, Larry.
Yeah. Currently, I'm the chief of staff at Manatee Memorial Hospital, so I'm intimately aware of some of the issues that go on with unreimbursed care. Personally, my practice has been impacted by unreimbursed care. I feel largely due to a failure of local government to produce an effective plan for the treatment of the county's indigent population. This failure has created a dangerous and unreasonable environment for both patients and physicians. Sitting idle and relying upon the good graces of the medical community is not really a solution. This path has led to stagnant growth in the healthcare market, which was outlined and expressed by Dr. Gonzalez. And we see around us other healthcare markets thriving and doing very well.
Hey, Larry, Larry, you might want to mute your phone. Thanks.
The form of physician volunteerism that you're seeing is really not analogous to a soup kitchen type model. The liability is way too high, the time investment is much too great. Those of us who are caring for the indigent population have really carried an unnecessary burden. Our practices have silently suffered, and the debate seems to go on and on and on within these walls. And patients have suffered as they attempt to navigate this current healthcare system and structure. We are way beyond the breaking point with this whole thing. And I would implore you to resolve the issue in an equitable manner, equitable to patients, to physicians, and to the healthcare facilities in Manatee County. It's all of our responsibility. In particular, it's your responsibility. You're carrying that burden at this point in time. And I realize it's a challenging situation, and we look to all of you for leadership. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, before we go any further, did you hear that Madam Chair wanted you to put your phone on mute until, because we can hear every movement.
Larry? Yes. Can you put your phone on mute?
Sorry, what was the question?
We just wondered if you could put your phone on mute because we can hear everything that y'all are discussing, and it's a little bit tough when we're hearing public comment to also hear background stuff. So if you want to put your phone on mute, so perhaps we don't hear your end.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm trying to figure this technology out. It's not easy.
And if anybody can figure out the technology, it's Larry.
Right.
Right, Larry could do it. All right, next I have Catherine Edwards.
I'd like to make this available to the commissioners.
You can hand anything you'd like to the clerk's office, and they can share the information.
To the clerk.
Okay. I just wanted to pass it around to the people. Catherine Edwards. taxpayer, geophysicist, and frustrated citizen. The county commissioners have been working on this budget over the last 6 to 8 months, and it's got there are issues with the constitutional's budgets, and there are issues with the budgets for the departments. Tax collector fails to deliver the budget to the financial management department in a timely manner. The property appraiser decides to provide pay raises despite the fact that the Florida Department of Revenue denied pay raises. The supervisor of elections has 100% fluctuations in budgeted versus actual salaries in the past. I haven't heard any questions about the current budget. The sheriff's office has black budgets, IR lasers, and deputies maiming citizens with the same. The financial management department has a very difficult job with such a large budget, but not too interested in having any supporting documentation for the budgets that the constitutionals submit. In fact, they could simply submit a number and that would be just fine with everybody. The Department of Public Safety contracts with fire districts to pay firemen. I can only conclude that the county commissioners don't really care about the money because millage rates and assessments are going to take care of all of that anyway, so it can be whatever it's going to be. The only money they care about is the money for re-election, and commissioners are convenient access to the levers of power. I wish it could be more. Why don't they care about budget discrepancies? Why don't they care about hidden black budgets? Why don't they care about budgets a sheriff may have that require a security clearance to see? This is a democracy. It can't happen here. Thank you.
Next up, I have Vernon Desir.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, Commissioners. I'm just here to tell you as a longtime citizen here, a person that grew up here and loves this community very much, that with all of the comments that have been made recently toward healthcare and those of us that are in that business, at some point we just have to trust each other. We have to believe in each other, that we can work together, that we can find a way to provide the appropriate care for the people that we love and live with. And I thank you for your service. I thank you for your time. I thank you for going through all of these documents and sitting here all day and listening to all of us. But I would like to just not be personal, just to say at this point that I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the time that you spend. And I just look forward at the future dates of all of us just working together to make this a better community. And to look out for each other and to care for each other, but also to care for you and what you go through and what you experience. The fact that sometimes being an elected official gives people the idea that you're owned. You know, you're all individuals. You all have the right to make your own decisions. And we appreciate that. And we thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak, to be a part of this community, to serve this community. I think you all know me well enough at this point that my heart is in the right place. The things that I do, the things that I'm involved with, they're all to make this a better place to live. So just my prayer is that we will all be able to dig down deep and figure out what's the best way for us to all work together to come up with a really great solution to the issues that we face, and that we can live happily together in this great place that we are.
Thanks, Vernon. Thank you. Next up, I have Joseph Darby.
Hello. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm actually a resident of Ohio still, and just recently moved down here about 30 days ago. I purchased a house on the island back in, when I could afford it, back in February of 2012. And with today's property values out there, I don't think anybody I know could afford to buy a house out there. Since I've been gone, though, we lived there for 18 months, and I wasn't able to homestead because you have to be there January 1st. You can't not rent your property. And my wife wanted to go back to Ohio to basically complete her nursing degree at OSU. Well, no, at Mount Carmel, I'm sorry, but with the education system in Ohio. She was halfway through when we moved down. So we were fortunate enough to be able to turn our house into a rental property to help to pay for the mortgage, the overhead expenses, and the addition to, put the pool in and make it a viable property to rent. Meanwhile, our property taxes have gone from $2,500 a month, or a year, I'm sorry, upwards of proposed at anywhere between $8,600 and $7,900. So when I was 21 and I had my first apartment for $615 a month, my taxes are now as much as my rent was. And I had a 1,400 square foot apartment. I have a 2,100 square foot house. And I think that the island, in my situation, is unique. Now we're full-time residents, but now looking at my new tax bill, it's like maybe we need to move back to Ohio because we can't afford to live at our house without making, I need to make $8,000 to $10,000 a month to stay here. And I think that the assessor walks around with kind of a magic wand and finds these values. I mean, my house right now on papers, market value is $570,000. I pulled up the recent comps in the 2-month, I had about a minute here, but I did a lot of paperwork, and I used to be a mortgage broker, and it should be somewhere more close to like $400,000 or $370,000. I paid $315,000 for my house a mere 3.5 years ago. What it's worth on paper and what I can afford it to be are two different things. I didn't buy it as an investment property. I bought it to live there. I have 2 kids. I would like to stay there. But I think the island is taking an unfair blunt of the property tax increase because there are a lot of developers out there buying up old ranches, turn them into these multiplexes that hold 8 people, 8 bedrooms, and they're selling them for like $1.2 million. I don't know. I can't afford a $1.2 million house, and most families can't. So there's got to be a balance there that you guys need to do a better job of finding because you're pushing residents off the island, and the residents want to stay there. And all that island traffic that's still going to continue actually helps out the rest of Bradenton. All those people have to travel Manatee and Cortez to get there. So it needs to be considered. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marta Morris.
Hello. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Marta Morris, and I too have come to talk about my trim notice that I just received. I closed in my home, which was half the size of Joe's, it was December 29th last year, 2014. I received my first trim notice. I am homesteaded, and my first trim notice, I went from $2,900 in taxes to both values of $8,200 and $7,500. I'm at a loss as to how it was calculated, how it's assessed. I have somebody that lives across the street from me, a couple houses down, that has a $1.5 million property. Their taxes are less than mine. I have 1,100 square feet. That's it. I'm not on a canal. I don't have access to, I'm far away from the beach. I'm just wondering, have you taken another look at some of the taxes that seem to be inappropriately charged? Or maybe there's a magic formula that was used that might be faulty in some instances. Is there a way that we can look at this before my final tax notice gets here, and a way that I can better understand it? I'm new to the area. I'm new to Florida. And I feel like I've done what I needed to do. I have filed a petition. I talked to an appraiser. We went to the a commissioners meeting on Holmes Beach, and they weren't aware that there were instances like this. And then we found out half the room was filled with trim notices that look like mine. So I just am at a loss, where do I go from here? What do I do before this November tax notice comes out? Because I too will be in the position of putting a for sale sign in front of my house and selling it and moving somewhere else.
Thank you.
Done what she can do right now. Okay, Glenn Gibellina.
My name is Glenn Gibellina. I'm taxpayer of Manatee County, and thank you for this opportunity. Can I talk about the pool heaters? Isn't that in the budget?
No,
No, God.
I don't know what you're talking about.
happens.
Oh, I'm sorry, you want to talk
Yeah,
about the
GT
pool
Bray.
heater? GT Bray, sure, you can talk about that. I didn't know what you were
Okay.
talking about.
Oh, you don't want them?
Yeah,
They're
come
being
on.
funded
themselves.
from the,
It is in our
fees.
budget.
You got to stop my clock if you're going to discuss
I
this.
will give you a
then
few more
don't
minutes.
ask, yeah.
Please.
Again, we're spending $20,000 and $8,000 a year to heat this pool with a fossil fuel.
Yes.
I mean, this is insane. Why don't you look at solar? In 5 years, you'd be spending $40,000 in natural gas for a diving team that wants to come in, a couple of times a month in February. I think it's important that, you look at the whole vision of the community. And if you went with those solar heaters, you could heat that pool all year round. So enough of that. Port Manatee budgets, you got $14,252,000 in reserves, transfers, and cash balances. There's no breakout. Again, somebody mentioned transparency and accountability. I don't see much of that. Item 10, the rowing expenses, you accelerated it from $300,000, 217 to $300,000. So they're going to get $600,000 this year. And what are they going to get in 217? Are you going to come back and tell us that we need another $300,000? And page 5, the public affordable housing, $3,238,943. Well, I'm on the Affordable Housing Board, and I've never seen that kind of money. So, again, the transparency and accountability is pretty lame as far as I'm concerned. Let's get back to the health care. Mr. Peters said that it was our responsibility to the government to take care of the indigent. Now, they may do a fine job, but I've been around to the Carlos Bucaris's task force hearings, and I've heard a lot from the rest of the state, not just in area. And I can tell you, it's not what we're hearing here. And we have a contract. We have a contract with the hospital. And in that contract, it says the obligations of the hospital. Part of that obligation is to come up with an agreement for the long care. I've asked about this before, and I haven't seen it. The Manatee healthcare systems and the Manatee County LLC, unless they're foreign corporations. I went on Sunbiz today, and Manatee County Hospital Healthcare Systems, Inc. isn't even listed in Sunbiz. So I got a serious problem with that. So that Mr. Delato is CEO on it. He's not listed. He's listed on 2 companies, Chamber of Commerce and the other one, which is defunct back in '94. So I'm really confused who we have this contract with, quite honestly. So transparency and accountability, we've got a long way to go, and it's not the government's job. Well, you may say it's the government's job, but it's not the taxpayer's job. As a taxpayer, we're not responsible for that. I'll leave that with you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else who would like to address the board on the budget, tentative budget that's before us for adoption? Please come forward, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I think most of you know me, Kevin Delalo. I'm the CEO of Manatee Memorial Hospital. I just wanted to reaffirm some of the conversation that's been up here so far today. In the last year, we've taken care of 6,000 patients that were county funded that have come to our hospital either as an inpatient or an outpatient. Total cost of those patients were well over $8 million. Without the support of the county, we could not have been taking care of those patients. I understand some of them would have come through the emergency room, as we all discussed, and we understand EMTALA laws of how they come through the emergency room. But at least 45% of them are outpatients that come for elective procedures that you've heard about from some of our physicians here tonight and some of our employees that have come that register these patients on a daily basis. It's very important that we continue to have this program in our county. It's very important for our patients, the patients that are less fortunate. You've heard of situations where there are patients that are hardworking people. I've said this over and over again. These are hardworking people that hit hard times. I mean, they have jobs, and you've met these people. You know that how they struggle sometimes to make ends meet. They're responsible people. They want to pay their bills. But at the same time, they get ill, and they have to come to our hospital, and they have to have us take care of them. And we do the best we can at taking care of them at our hospital. State of Florida just cut our LIP funding $6 million. I don't think it's reasonable to think that we can continue to fund county programs without your funding for indigent care. And I don't think it's reasonable to think that physicians in our community can do that care for free. We have to make sure that we support that. It's difficult to recruit physicians to this market. It's difficult to bring new programs to this market when we don't have stability in our health care. And I would like you to consider funding the county program, to continue to fund that program, and to bring that health care to the less fortunate citizens of our community. And I thank you for that.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to address the board on the budget that's proposed tonight? Okay, seeing no one come forward, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment portion of this budget hearing. Going back to my board, I got some comments. Commissioner Baugh?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Glenn, solar heat on a pool, I've had it. I still own a home that has it. And you cannot get in the water in the wintertime with solar heat. It does not heat in the wintertime. So that doesn't work. I want to address a couple of other things. And there's some things about this budget that really bother me. And you all, most of you in this room know it. To insinuate that this commission, and I'll only speak about myself, I can't speak for the others, although I know what I'm about to say they would agree with. To say that we don't care is truly so unfair. No one sitting down there knows what the county commissioners go through to try and figure out how to handle the budget, how to make sure that we do for people in Manatee County the best that we can do. I don't agree with some of the things in this budget at all, and I came here prepared not to vote for it because I think that it's putting us in a position that we're not going to be able to continue. You know, the bottom line is it's not just up to this county commission. It's up to all citizens in Manatee County. And I think that's been a lot of the problem in the past, is that some people have felt that it's just up to the county to pay for things. Well, it's not. It's up to all of us to work together to give the best care that we can in this county for not just the indigent, but all those, including people that don't have jobs, that don't have any insurance. It's not just about people that have jobs, but they're having a tough time, they can't afford the insurance. It's more than that. We have a heroin problem going on. You know, it takes the entire county. So I get a little ticked off when I hear that it's just this board or it's just the county. It's not. It's everyone. Everyone sitting out there, every resident of Manatee County is involved. And if you don't agree with that, there's something wrong with you. To insinuate that this board, and I am really tired of hearing this, that we're owned by others, or that we're bought, or that we're paid for, is such an insult.
And the people saying that have no clue at all what's really going on and what this job does and what it takes to really try to do a good job. It takes working sometimes 12 and 14-hour days, 7 days a week. And we do it because we want to help. We want to make a difference. We want to look out for the people in Manatee County. So to come before us and insult us is not the way to go about it, and it's not worthwhile. It doesn't help anyone. Because I got to tell you, there are times when I sit back and I go, you know what, I must care. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't be doing it because of the way I get talked to. You know, we all have had death threats this year. We've all been called names, but we do it. We stay here and we work on this because we believe in this county. I have a problem with taking $14 million out of reserves for the next 2 years because our county administrator has told us that come 18, we're in a deficit. I'm a business owner. To me, we should be sitting back cutting the budget, not taking almost every dime we have that's in reserves for other things. We need to be cutting back and saving the citizens' money. So there's tough decisions to make up here on this dais, and we make them every day and every year and every month. But it takes all of you to work with us to do that. And we're all committed, or we wouldn't be here. So that's all I really wanted to say, just food for thought for some in the audience. Thank you.
Commissioner Whitmore?
Well, I'm not coming that route at all, so I wanted to talk to the people from the island. I've lived there since 1969, and John Chappie's lived there a couple of years after me, so we totally understand your pain. We are homesteaded, but paying $18,000 in insurance until I shopped around and got a little bit more off. I get it. But unfortunately, the countywide taxes went up 8.3%, and Island went up 9-something%, the values. And I think Lakewood Ranch went up almost that, too. So,
Mine's over $9,000.
no, I'm talking about the values, our values. So, you know, to live out there, you got to pay, unfortunately. Trust me, I feel the pain as much as everyone. I've been there since '69. Your cities that you went to see, they raised their millage as high as they could this year, and you know that because you went to the public hearings. You know that. The county hasn't raised the millage since 2007. So the increase you're seeing is because your property values went up, which we don't have anything to do. That's a separate constitutional office. We don't do that. But, you know, we all feel your pain.
And you're not homesteaded. I mean, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, if you're not homesteaded,
I have
yeah.
a property in Michigan and I'm not homesteaded, and they do the same thing there that we do in Florida. You really get the people that aren't homesteaded, so I know that's an issue. Hopefully it'll be better when you are homesteaded.
And I have a friend that actually lives at the north end, and he pays $48,000 a year non-homesteaded, and he is finally going to homestead this year, but from now on it's $48,000, and then he gets like a 3%. You know, that's very rough. I do support the funding in the budget for indigent care. I've never made a secret about that since I came up here in 2006, in November of 2006, and I will continue. Dr. Peters didn't mention, he also oversees the residency program and the critical care. I see him there all the time. And Dr. Gonzalez does clinical trials all over the county, for neurological issues. And we were talking when I was in his office, because my husband goes there. My husband doesn't care if I say that. And we were talking about what percentage of indigency sees at Blake versus Manatee, and he works at both stroke programs at both hospitals. And at Blake, most of them are over 50 or over 65 and have insurance. Then he comes to Manatee Hospital. Most of them are under 50 and they're male and they're having strokes and they don't have insurance. So, but he knows that's part of his role as a physician and he takes care of them. But once you get the acute part taken care of, somebody's got to take care of that person. They can't walk, can't feed himself. If you leave him in bed, he's going to get bed sores at home. You know, and me as a healthcare provider, I am not going to support that. You know, this has been a very passionate issue with healthcare, and I still hope there's light at the end of the tunnel. When Ray Fusco came up today and said, you know, I think you all made progress, I thought, where in the heck has he been? But he hasn't been to a few meetings. But he actually thought we were exactly, you know, actually moving in a direction. So I'm going to continue to support the funding for the next 2-year budget for healthcare, and of course they have to sign the contracts. Until they do that and comply with all the rules that they do to get the money, they don't get it. So I do support keeping that in reserves until they get it, and that's all.
Mr. DiSabatino.
Oh, thank you for coming today, and I see a lot of gentlemen and ladies from the sheriff's office here. So I have concerns about that budget. I'm going to start with, so the Children's Advisory money, and I know we're having a meeting coming up with this. Is that correct? Or to going over this budget? Yes. But I have one question, and it was brought to my attention last week that the line, and I'll have them scan it in.
page? Oh.
No, it was
Previously handed out.
previously handed out on July 27th, 2015, the recommendation for this, because Commissioner Benak and I, Baugh and I, I'm sorry, were concerned about finding money in the budget, and we asked the administrator, and he said no, that's his budget, so I went upon this summer finding money in the budget. So just in the line item 38 on the CSAB funding, it says, School District of Manatee, it's your choice. And I know these are all great programs, and they're funding for $335,000. But the ordinance that we've been working on for the Children's Service Advisory Ordinance, on page 7 of the ordinance, section, let's see, it's section 5, page 7, section C, to allocate and provide funds for agencies in Manatee County which are operated for the benefit of juveniles, provided they are not under the exclusive jurisdiction of the public school system. So this is going directly to the public school system. So it's, according to this act, this ordinance number 91-42, and amended a few years later, but that section was not amended. It was amended, just the people serving on the board was amended. So we need to look into this $335,000. I don't know if that should not be funded and just put back into the Children's Services reserves, okay? Because you're asking for another personnel for that, so it would offset that. And then the other thing is, item 54, Anna Maria Island Community Youth and Families Initiative, I get that, $95,000. But I was told that what they presented is not exactly what the program was. Plus, there's the scoring on a score of 4 being the highest. And we're looking for outcomes in the scoring. So the board does unbelievable work and hours upon hours. The scoring is only 1.73, and as out of a 4.0, it's not passing. So most of the funds are in the 3s, high 3s that we're funding, and then go into the mid 2s. So this 1.73 is low. So again, that's 95,000. Requests recommended 91. So those are 2 items that could just go back into the reserves for next year.
So you recommend don't fund them then?
Yeah, so I
Is
recommend.
this before us tonight? I'm a little
But-
confused.
No, but
It's all
you
part
can,
of budget.
Yeah, he needs to know
but you
that.
haven't entered the contracts yet with them. So if
Okay.
you don't enter the contract, the money can then roll back. You don't have to take an action
So I just
tonight.
want to, be proactive on that.
Good.
And then, let's go to Just regarding the TIF, there's money in the TIF. We don't have a plan yet for the TIF, but remembering the CRA days where we allocated a percentage of the CRA dollars for law enforcement, for sidewalks, streetlights, and so forth. Can a portion of the TIF be set aside for law enforcement in the TIF area? That would offset some of the costs for the sheriff, like we do in the CRA.
I'm going to answer that because I specifically added that when we had the TIF ordinance, that we could pay
Right.
for
It would
that.
continue.
So that would be extra money that we could find for the sheriff's office, and that would be recurring.
That's already budgeted.
What you're talking about?
But that, we have the TIF money, but that would come out of the TIF money.
Instead of the
We have no-
CRA? Instead of what's
CRA?
committed
No,
from the CRA funds? Is
the
that
money
what you're
is,
talking about?
no, the CRA money is being spent in that CRA area. The
The
TIF is the
CRA
rest.
money is reserved.
Right.
Moving forward, we have funds in the TIF. It's not been allocated, right? I mean, we have not allocated
We have
what the future
1.4.
TIF will go to.
No,
We're just starting that money.
we haven't.
We have 1.4 set aside, and that's recurring money.
You would have seen that today if we could have gotten to that. You had it on your agenda to see that TIF proposals, but we couldn't get to that.
Okay. We also had a Red Letter Day yesterday. I saw our friends from Visible Men, and they closed on our Taylor Nursery property, so they gave the county a check for $85,000. So does that go back into the CRA money?
Yes.
Or does that go back into the general fund for the TIF?
CRA is
Because
the
it
one
came
that
out of
paid it.
CRA money to begin with.
Yes, it does go back. It's
CRA.
reserved within the general fund, so when you said that, I want to make sure we're really clear. that
Right,
It goes
exactly.
right back to the CRA and it's restricted.
So there's extra money for another year or two for extra policing in Pride Park. Okay. This morning, when we were going over this healthcare budget, I brought up that the two line items for reserve, one was 1.3, and I had written that down when I was going over the budget this summer. That is recurring funds, and you indicated that, yes, that's recurring funds. That's money that could be spent for anything in the world, basically,
Said it.
and it's recurring. So I'm throwing out for some of that, all of that, to go towards extra law enforcement, and then hear me out. We didn't raise the ad valorem for that, which I wanted to do, but we didn't. I can't open the paper, I can't turn on my iPad to the Bradenton Herald, any of the papers, and there's not 5 major issues going on with shootings, with crime, with theft, with this and that, and then what's going on in the country. I mean, we could have a Ferguson at any time, God forbid. 50,000 more people, more properties. You know, when he tells me, the sheriff tells me that he needs 10 more people with boots on the ground, and he's got a big force that will be retiring soon. So we need more people to come up through the ranks. So
And Robin, I believe for 4 deputies, I think he told me it was 343,000 that
but
he
he
would
needs
need.
10.
But he needs 10 total.
So I'm just flagging that
12,
tonight.
actually.
I'm just flagging that tonight.
It was 12.
So that's the 1.3, and I know funding for like the Manatee Glens that we were talking about this morning, because they're looking for another 1.2 or something. That money could come out of reserves as one-time funding, but the sheriff's money can't. So I'm saying to earmark this 1.3 for the sheriff. We didn't agree on the 450 for the marchmen. Also, I'm just throwing this out, the Rabonia invitation to negotiate. Do we need to set aside any money for that? Not fund it yet, but just set it aside. And also a note to self, the constitutional officers return money each year at the end of their fiscal year.
Bingo.
And I don't see that anywhere that he's going to get that back, because normally he gets that back, and I think it's anywhere from 800 or 900 to $1 million too, and he needs that back for special projects. So
Has that been discussed, Mr. County Administrator?
He was going to bring it up.
Sheriff and I have discussed that, yes.
Okay.
I think it is, because I read it in the budget material that it was going to be reserved in our budget for sheriff projects. Is that correct? Is that what I read?
Sheriff and I have had a discussion in the last couple of weeks about half of it will go to
Helicopter.
the helicopter and whatever else. This is really a discussion for November. The other half, he has projects that he would like to see funded, and I have agreed with him.
So the monies then will remain with the Sheriff's Department, is that what you mean?
because in our booklet that we got, and thank you for sending this ahead of time, that was really helpful. Flagged items list from 7:30. So page 2 of that, the second item down is sheriff's excess fees, and it has 0 or
I'm
NA.
sorry, where are you?
And I just
What page?
Page 2
Okay.
of our tag of flag items. I just want to make sure, because it's not saying any amount of money giving back and not recommending it. So I just want to make sure, because I know the
Oh, right. Second item down.
supervisor of election wrote us a letter that he needs his money returned because he doesn't know about the special election and the redistricting, and so I just want to make sure that it's on the record that he needs that. It was mentioned also about the 300,000 advance funding for the rowing. So it's advance funding, even though the money will come out of TDC money. Right now, if we're forward funding it, it's out of general funds.
They have
No,
a reserve.
no.
Oh, it's reserved,
They have
TDC.
a reserve.
It's a reserve? Okay, okay. I
Yeah.
stand corrected on that one. I think, let's see. There were other items. I think this is the last thing I have. And I didn't bring my other, it's upstairs, the other book where the 1,000-page book that we went through, 1,400-page book. There's certain items on there, and this is just what the county administrator can jot down. And I think I had given this to Dan Schlant in a briefing a while ago. There's a line item, because Glenn mentioned about affordable housing, he sits on that board, and I don't think they really have done anything in the last at least 4 years that I know of. So there's a line item, affordable housing subsidy funds of 1.4 million. Are we even using that?
Is that Sadowski money? I mean, are we talking about
Anybody know?
money that is being spent for affordable housing that is Sadowski funds?
I don't think so.
I can get Sherry to give you an answer before next week.
Yeah, well, that
Okay.
money, there is money that came that wasn't there before, that we've, under SHIP. I couldn't
No,
remember.
and it's different than
SHIP
the SHIP.
funds that
Right.
go toward affordable housing.
No,
Is that it?
this is different than SHIP. So if you can look into that, that's 1.4 million that seemed to be recurring, so that's more money there. That could go to Manatee Glens or the hospital or wherever, or back in the bank.
I believe that's all grant money.
Okay.
And not if it's SHIP, it can't.
Okay. And we've talked about these two items that Larry might want to weigh in on. Funding for Gulf Coast Legal and Legal Aid. Gulf Coast Legal is 10,000, Legal Aid is 70. There's another one that's a solution to avoid red tide, 9,500. I mean, these are little amounts, but they add up because the red tide, the Tampa Bay estuary deals with that, the Sarasota estuary deals with that. I don't know what this is actually for.
Goes to Moat with Moat.
But there's another MOAT
No,
program.
I was on the Board of Solutions to Avoid Red Tide, and they work with Moat, and that's the funding we get for Moat to do.
Well, maybe we can get a
I'm
report on that
just
if they're
telling you
still
that's
doing
what
it.
is. Yeah,
I don't
we are.
know.
They still are.
Don't
Sandy
we have another
Gilbert.
fund for Moat
No,
as well?
Sandy
We
Gilbert.
have another line item for MOAT.
Sandy
That's what I
Gilbert
thought.
comes in the audience. He's the one that represents us on Solutions to Avoid Red
Okay.
Tide.
And
just
then
so you
the
know.
last one is Suncoast Community Capital. We had talked about that during one of the budget meetings, 10,418. You know, that again is, those four items total 100,000 plus the $1.4 million, so it's $1.5 million. that are money that are recurring money that could be used for something else or go back in the piggy bank. What I wanted to say regarding the healthcare, and Commissioner Ball said it very well. You know, we are a caring community. We had a couple hours on the animals, and we fund animal services. So, we do fund those that can't fund for themselves. We are a caring community, and Glenn's been working on with Dr. Connard about the remote area medical event coming up in November, and that's huge. They went out of the state to find out what it was doing elsewhere, and they're bringing it here. And we're having a lot of the docs and the dentist on deck for that. We are just the lady Catherine. We're spending our reserves. We're not bringing in to cover all the services that we're providing right now. And that money is going to only last us 2 more years.
It's gone.
And so technically it's gone because it's earmarked somewhere. I'm just asking the hospitals in the community, what can we do? Okay? We had a referendum that didn't pass. Wrong time, wrong question. We're in deficit spending. No one wants us to raise the millage. So in 2 years, when we don't even have the $18 million to draw on to keep us whole, we're going to be facing a big dilemma. So, and it's not like we even need to start now. We needed to start this discussion 2-3 years ago of how we're going to fund this. And I feel for you. If I could write a check today to make you whole, I would. But right now, we're spending our reserves. If we give it to you now, and then next year we give it to you then what happens in 3 years? We have no money. Absolutely none. Plus, we're going to have to take it away from our parks, take it away from our beaches. We're going to have to start either cutting severely now or other funding streams. And we're talking about other funding streams, but we need to work on it because, this stuff, every time you talk about a new issue, it's 6 months, a year down the road, and you're still at square one, and I got my foot nailed to the ground. So I'm not faulting you. I'm not. And we really appreciate all the work you do in the community and all the money and time that the docs spend to take care of the indigent. But we've been asking for a solution for the last couple years, and now we're sitting here again with no fault of yours or ours. There's no plan. So, again, I'm asking the county administrator, like I asked this morning, what is the plan? The plan, to me, is not acceptable to say we're going to have a committee to talk about what the plan is, because we know what the plan needs to be. So, we need to make some bold decisions, and we may need some bold leadership. And I'm asking for that bold leadership. If not, we need change in leadership. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Careful what you ask for. I'm up next. There is no doubt that our job is to go through these tough questions and figure out where the money's going. We know where the revenues are coming from right now, and we're short revenue to pay for all the things that people want. That should not come as a surprise to anyone. But as pointed out, we're spending reserves to pay for health care. We talked today a lot about what we're going to spend that money on. And, this issue of the sheriff needing more folks is nothing new. It has been every year that I've been here and before that, and it will continue. We will continue to need to improve our public safety. But right now, we're making Band-Aid decisions. We're really making Band-Aid decisions. We told the sheriff we don't have any money. We're spending the savings to pay for health care. We are going to be in trouble, and we do need to come up with a plan for additional revenue. It's just a fact. Where will it come from? Will it be additional increase in ad valorem? Will it be some new fees that we haven't had before? You know, we've been told about some options. We said we were going to try to look into that, and we have to start now. We have to start right away to look at what are the options. Maybe some people don't want a committee. They don't want to have input. We're going to have input. People, once you start telling them, we're going to ask y'all for more money. We're going to ask y'all for more taxes. People will come talk to us about that. I have no doubt that they'll come talk to us about that. But the reality is we cannot continue to provide the services that we have in a growing community without more revenue. And people will say, well, gosh, that means growth isn't paying for itself. Well, we pointed out growth is actually subsidizing those people that are only going up by 0.8%.
Yep.
Growth is subsidizing those folks that have been here for a long time and aren't paying. Unlike this gentleman, they're homesteaded, they have very limited increase, but the reality is Florida has always been a cheap place to move to and live. But now, what, the third largest state in the union? So people want to live here, maybe they are going to have to pay more. And that's something we're going to have to continue to talk about, because we cannot continue to rely solely on growth to pay for everything. Because you know what? We're going to have a slowdown in growth. It's going to happen, you know, just by the demographics. So we're going to have to start looking and making hard decisions and having input, whether it's a committee or not. You know, this idea that Manatee County is one of the only counties in the state that doesn't have a revenue source for health care, we're probably not going to be able to continue that forever and provide and continue to have a good health care system. That just probably is not realistic. So we are going to continue to have to look at that. Where is that money going to come from? I wanted to note also, somebody had brought up Duet Preserve. You know, the people of this community voted an additional tax to buy Duet Preserve.
That's right.
So I know Ms. Neely seemed to be all concerned about why we do such things. Well, because the people told us to do those kind of things. So we are going to have to work with the people of this community. I think Commissioner Boss said it eloquently. I mean, this is something we all have to work together. And
I think we said the same thing last year, though, when we were sitting up here doing
I know
this.
it is real. I encourage people to continue to look at the budget. We don't have money that we spend frivolously. If y'all are thinking that, you need to show us where. I mean, Robin's done a good job of trying to drill down and see what is there, what isn't there. But the reality is we've got money that we've had saved up for a long time to spend over a certain amount of time to keep our budget whole. That money's going to be gone, and we're going to be in a situation where we're going to have to figure out how to replace it. So, and that's coming up in 2017, 18, where we know we're going to be in the hole. So, at this point, I don't have a lot of answers, but it is something we're going to need to start on as soon as possible. I did want to say in regards to the sheriff excess fees, this is on the, in your packets where it says further analysis recommended. It did say excess fees to be returned to county and designated for sheriff projects. So I believe that. This is on what page?
It has NA and 0.
If I may answer that one.
Okay.
You're looking at a July 30th document that we brought, and the only reason that's back in your packet is just for reference.
Okay.
And the note at the bottom of the page says we highlighted in yellow the ones that have been now included in the tentative, and that's the only reason that document's in there, for no other reason. It was for your reference.
That one's not highlighted in yellow.
No.
It's not.
Because the administrator had instructed us that that will be dealt with in the fall, and that the agreement was made, half would go for anything that was returned, half would go for the helicopter, and half would be returned to the sheriff.
Okay.
For projects he needed.
Okay, well, that's new information, I think.
And I'm sorry, I just want to make sure on this. Is this monies that the sheriff will be keeping?
No, he has to
Not
give it
monies
back.
that's going to come back to the county for
Has
us to hold?
It's kind of like if I understand it correctly, it's kind of like the CRA money. It'll come back, but it's going to be designated for sheriff projects.
A line
Is that
item
what
for
you're
him.
saying?
Is that,
That's the way I understand
Can we answer?
Statutorily, it is, the constitutionals are required to return what they don't spend at the end of the year. What we did during the recession is to encourage them not to spend all the money, is the board made a decision to return to them during the recession, each of the constitutionals, that which they didn't spend at the end of the year. The sheriff has challenges, and he and I met in the last week. And he knows he's going to need a helicopter, and so half of what he returns would go towards the helicopter. And the other half would go towards some of the challenges he faces because of our lack of funding for replacement assets.
and there'll be some sort of written agreement?
It doesn't need to be a written agreement. It would be when he returns the money, we would have a budget amendment for you to return it to him.
I
That's
see.
the written
Okay,
agreement.
I see. Okay.
well, it's on record right now.
All right, yeah. Okay.
All right, next up after me, I had Commissioner Whitmore.
Okay. You know, I've been hearing since years now that we don't have a plan. Well, Tammy, you never, I don't think I've ever seen you at a meeting here before, so thank you. I've known you since you started. The hospital started the first PHO where they actually got physicians together to negotiate with insurance companies a competitive rate if you belong to that PHO, and she was the Nazi PHO person that y'all had to deal with, the doctors had to sign with to negotiate with insurance companies. And now you're in the financial department, so good. I know I keep hearing we don't have a plan. She just stated we treat 400 a month there. Obviously, we've had some sort of a system. It may not be this grandiose plan that hopefully we'll have in the future, but we have taken care of hundreds of thousands of patients since this 30 years, since this, they sold the hospital. So to say that we've been doing willy-nilly and the hospital's been doing what they wanted, and, you know, that's not true. The hospital.
That's not what we're saying at all.
Can I
right, let her
please finish
finish.
my statement?
Not debate. Let
Yeah,
her finish.
please. The county audits everything that all the hospitals get. Any reimbursement the hospital gets, the county has to audit it. And it's, you know, from what we understand, there hasn't been any issues. And it's been addressed, I mentioned it this morning, the funding stream. You know, and Ed, you brought this up, I know, twice before at public meetings, that it's going to get rough this year because we're going to have to look at funding streams. I voted to increase millage this year, so did Robin. We lost, and we have to move on now. But you can darn bet that we're going to have to in the next year or so. I mean, what are we going to do? We're in our reserves. We have to. And every city in Manatee County has increased their millage. The school board, I watched their meeting the other night, and I think it's 7.2 something. They just increased their millage again. Now, if we, and the fire districts, oh my God, do you ever even see anybody at the fire district meetings complaining about their taxes? So the school board actually, out of our taxes, actually, the school board gets more money than the county does. So, and yet we've held so tight that we're in this predicament. So hopefully the commission next year, and it's hard, but the commission has to look at possibly increasing some kind of, or finding another revenue source. And this infrastructure needs that we have throughout the county, except where new growth pays for itself, we have to look at possibly doing something like that. We may have to do some kind of infrastructure tax where it will pay to maintain the tired parts of this county that we can't do. The parts that Charles talks about all the time. Robin and John, the west part of town, the south part of town. Those are the tired parts of the town that we may have to figure out a way to fund them in the future. And maybe the citizens would buy that versus the health care. I still support taking care of the health care, and if we could offset those funds, those monies, we could probably afford health care, the cost, in our budget, because we would be moving it over to another tax for infrastructure. That's just something to look at. Robin keeps mentioning the 1.3 million. It was at the bottom of our sheet this morning, Ed, and she's saying that we can use it willy-nilly. I just want to know, what is that 1.3 million for? What have you been using it? Why was it at the bottom of that sheet this morning?
That is an amount of money that has typically gone towards the
Reoccurring
uncompensated health care at the hospital. In recent years, it has gone towards the LIP funding.
So the money that we give them plus that went towards LIP funding?
It has all gone towards health care.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Commissioner Bustle has a question. Yes. Go ahead, Larry.
we have a budget process that involves doing the decision units, and we did that. It involves flagging items that we have questions about,
Yep.
and we did that, and we had a budget reconciliation meeting where we reconciled the flagged items. So now at this public hearing is not the time to start rehashing our budget. Accordingly, I move to adopt resolution B16-001, the tentative millage rates for fiscal year 15 and 16.
Can we do that right now?
Sure we can. We
Second it.
still listen. All right, we have a motion and a second. We have people to discuss that. Commissioner Smith, you want to discuss and I agree with Larry that we did have all of those things. We have a budget before us. Now's not the time to
Right.
rearrange it. However,
In the
if
future?
there's issues with the budget, we're hearing it. Commissioner Smith, I want to go ahead and give you an opportunity.
Okay, I need to ask our county attorney a question before I go to speaking. What I'm trying to find out, the money that's going to be returned to the sheriff department, supervisor of election, whoever it may be, does it need a vote by this Board of County Commission to do so legally? Since we're returning it once we receive it.
Yeah, you will need to, if I speak, you'll need to vote on it. It would require a budget amendment. They will return the money in accordance with state statute. You will need to vote to give it back to them.
Okay, I'm protecting the record. That's why I asked that question, because it wasn't clarified too much. So, thank you. I'm gonna clarify the record, so it don't be any kind of deal where it doesn't happen. Commissioner, you and you did a good job, and Commissioner Whitmore, and we fought this issue, and the millage rate would have took care of all of these problems. And I believe it was only be $11 a year.
Yep.
Well, we can't increase it. You can,
Not now.
today, the only subject you can do is decrease it.
No, please.
Does anyone want to decrease it?
Let me finish saying what I'm saying.
You can change it around.
Not today.
We talk about deficits,
Nothing that says you can't.
Spending.
we talk about reserves, we talk about all these different things. Tell me what county or what city that is moving forward and does not have a deficit if they don't never raise the millage. You're gonna have the same problem next year and the year after if you don't do something about it. Now, we can continue to say what we don't want to take out the reserve. We can blame healthcare. It's not healthcare. We got issues across the board dealing with the deficit.
But we have a motion on the floor, and we have a second. We
Madam
have to
Chair,
address
everyone
the
has had
motion.
discussion except me. Except me. Everybody had their due diligence, so let me put what I got to say on the record. And I'm going to support the motion.
Okay.
Now, I also agree with Commissioner Barr. I was not going to support the budget. And this, in my opinion, is a shotgun budget.
Yeah.
It is a shotgun budget where you almost have to vote for something that you really don't support. And I'm not used to it. Now, getting back to the point with the county administrator, I have some concerns and some issues, but he has been up front. He does not have authority to vote for a millage increase. It takes us to do that. So he can talk all he wants, can twist your arm until we have the will to make that decision. It's easy for us to blame him, even though I'm blaming him about a couple of things.
2 or 3.
But that's a friendly thing.
At least
But
it's friendly.
He can't do it. And it's going to be worse next year. Now, I met with Colonel Wells and Sheriff Stubing. And the concept of law enforcement and public safety is a major concern of mine. The task force he has organized to protect us with detectives across this county goes out, and they spend a lot of time in overtime, such as the shooting on 17th Street East at Snappy's, which the Sheriff Department had deputies out there, they had a task force out there to see the Braden and Holmes Beach, all of them. You have to pay for that kind of stuff. And so the thing that I'm very much concerned about is the fact that, Mr. County Administrator, I think you really need to give us a recommendation and don't keep the status quo of you not increasing anything. Manatee County government quality of life will suffer. 50 more thousand people have came here. We got problems in parish, emergency services, we got health issues, we got the quality of life issues in parks. You're not going to take in enough revenue if you don't increase something next year and the year after. You don't have to be a CPA. You get economists to sit here and tell you. 9 years. And I went to 2 association meetings, and I told them up front that it's going to have to be increased for the quality of life. But I want you to tell these guys that came out to that shooting when 2 brothers was gunned down, murdered. Horrible. And the time that they put in, law enforcement, chasing that with the Pembina Police Department, that task force, to apprehend that individual almost in about 24 hours. It took a lot of overtime to do that. So we got to continue to support that. So I just want to keep in mind why I'm going to support Commissioner Bustle recommendation for this budget. In my opinion, it's a shotgun budget. It don't do everything that I want to be done. And so I'm going to really scrutinize the budget and try to be proactive in what we need to do. But my last message to my colleagues, my good friends, no one wants to increase taxes. No one. No one wants to do that. But if your position is you will never do it, it becomes a political issue.
Right.
Trust me. It becomes a political issue. And if you go to some of the meetings, we can't just not make tough decisions on this level. They can do it in Congress and legislate. They can sit there and make games all day and don't do anything. We have to do something. So I'm going to support the budget is. I'm not going to go against anything that we've already said that we're going to do. I just want to make sure that the Sheriff Department and the supervisor election, those parties that need to be, and I've been confirmed that it takes a vote by us to do so to make sure that it's legal. I just wanted to put that on the record, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Since the motion on the floor is for adoption of Resolution B 16-001, right? And that is the tentative millage rate only. Does anyone have any questions about that motion? And again, the only options we have is to decrease it.
Decrease it, right.
So we're talking about setting the millage rate as it's proposed, not proposing a decrease. We have a motion and a second. Is there anything that has to be discussed regarding this motion?
No.
Okay, then I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye.
Aye.
You're voting against the millage rate, Robin? Okay. Chair votes aye, so motion carries 6-1.
We haven't said that in a while.
So
6-1.
So the next item is the adoption of Resolution B 16-002, budget for Manatee County.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there comments about this motion? Commissioner DiSabatino?
Again, that 1.3 that's in reserves,
I'm on that.
we do budget amendments, adjustments every month, every 2 weeks. So I don't see why we can't make an adjustment tonight to 1.3, even allocate 1 million of that to the sheriff.
Is that a motion?
No, we're not taking, we
We
have a
already-
motion
we
on the
already
floor.
have a motion.
Second.
Am I?
Yes,
Okay.
comment?
Actually, that's what I was going to say. I think we should take at least 1 million of that 1.3 and put it toward the sheriff. We're trying to make sure that we have all the very important aspects here in Manatee County covered, and I think law enforcement definitely is important. So I would like to see that at least 1 million of that taken and
Okay.
put toward the sheriff.
On what item, Madam
I think
Chair?
we got to remember, this 1.3 is in reserves. It's not allocated for anything specifically. Mr. Hunsaker, you had a comment on that?
I would just like to remind the board that your own employees that you've listened to on several occasions this summer have come forth with the Evergreen study, and you, in that study, represented that you were going to try and solve that $2.2 million problem in your own workforce.
Right.
I think that's a heck of
And
a
I-
thing to come and throw at us.
I
to
also
tell you
want to
the
just,
truth.
We are increasing 4% across the board.
Yeah, but we said,
That's-
I didn't, but, I mean, we also supported that we needed to find a way to
I
get more
I
money.
think our
Okay,
men and women who
let's-
carry a gun are a little different standard.
I just want to make a point. If we, and this is what it comes down to, we have a limited amount of money. We have some in reserves. We're talking about covering a hole for healthcare. And now we're talking about shifting that to cover an issue in public safety. You're making a trade-off. And is that the right trade-off? I'm not convinced that Manatee Glens, Centerstone, isn't a way to prevent needing more sheriff coverage. So if we all of a sudden we make them deficient, have we really achieved the goal? If we're taking money from healthcare, from mental health, are we reaching our goal of making us a safer community? I'm not so sure about that.
14
That's my
million
personal-
is already there. I mean, let's not forget, we do have 14 million of our reserves going toward healthcare.
I was on the.
Sorry, I was.
But I just want to dialogue just for a minute. I mean, the discussion that we had today about that 1.3 million was it was going to cover what we were defunding
From the.
at
the-
Manatee Glens. So that's not true. I mean, we're talking about a significant decrease in mental health funding by taking that out and giving additional revenue to the sheriff. And I'm not saying the sheriff doesn't need additional revenue, but we have limited revenue. We got to make tough choices, and that's not a choice that I'm willing to support at this time.
Madam Chair, I call for the question.
Carol was still on the board.
Nice to have you back, Larry.
Carol's on
I
the-
talked to the head of EMS, at lunch we saw him, 1,100 ODs since January, and he verified, and then I mean, the hospital told me, then I verified it with EMS, 10 overdoses a day still coming through Manatee Hospital's ER, and I dare say I should have asked the stats how many of them had insurance to be paid and admitted, then have to go over to the psych. My whole career has been healthcare, taking care of the less fortunate. I cannot go against my values, and I support the sheriff. I voted for an increase this year. You can't say I didn't support the sheriff. I did. For those 12 positions, I did. And I haven't raised taxes as an elected official since 1998. So this was a big step for me, and we didn't win that vote, and now we're here today. I'm not going to compromise taking care of the less fortunate. I just can't do it, and it even upsets me that people would do that, but I respect everybody. You're all my friends. After this, we'll be all fine. We'll all go to lunch with our attorney, of course, just so everybody knows. And it'll be
know.
over
That's
with.
pretty
This
heavy
deal will be over with.
I know,
But
I went to dinner sometime.
I know, that's pretty heavy duty.
well, anyway, I'm still on the board. I just want to say, I hope that we have the votes to approve the budget as I made the motion, as it is today.
And you will get.
For the question.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion to call for the question. We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion passes 6-1.
I just want to say,
So the motion that we have called for the question, you'll get another opportunity. We got one more vote, and then you can talk still. All right, so we have the motion before us. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
nay.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Larry, did you vote at aye, right? I didn't hear. Okay. Motion passes 5-2. Next up, we have adoption of Resolution B16-003. This is the budget for Manatee County Dependent Special Districts. Haven't talked a lot about this, but
I move adoption of Resolution B-16-003, budget for Manatee County Dependent Special Districts.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any comments on this motion? Okay, seeing no comments, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. It's fun to say.
That's
seven
weird,
again.
isn't it? That's nice.
Now, we have another meeting after this, Madam Chair, another hearing, right? Another public hearing on the 22nd.
Oh, yeah.
Next
especially
Tuesday.
tonight.
Okay, no, not tonight.
This is the tentative budget So we
Right.
are going to have, we have another meeting, if you would announce the aggregate millage rate comparison.
Yes, ma'am. The aggregate millage rate for Manatee County Board of County Commissioners for the fiscal year FY16 is 6.8488 mils, and the change from the rollback aggregate millage rate is 6.3906 for the operating millage is hereby determined to be 7.1% change. That's for your trim to be in compliance. I needed to read that through.
Okay. And the location and date of the next public hearing on this same issue will be, and do we do it any differently, or do we do it exactly the same way?
Exactly the same.
Okay. All right, the next round will be.
The next round will be
22nd?
September 22nd.
September 22nd, 6
that next
PM
week?
in this chambers.
Oh, God, that's next week.
Okay.
Yes.
Robin, I know you were waiting to have a chance
Okay.
to speak.
On our handy dandy sheet this morning, I don't know where it is now.
Which sheet? Which one?
From this morning's
Budget
budget.
or health?
You had it,
Which one, the budget or the
Well,
healthcare?
the two items at the bottom,
right.
where is the budget summary? Here we are. Anyway, you had the 1.3.
Oh, it's this.
And that's recurring money. So that's where I was saying we were gonna get the money for the sheriff. 1 million out of recurring money. We still have 6 point some million, almost 7 million on the out of reserves. So we still have not made a decision. Manatee Glens can come out of that, and some of the hospitals can come out of that, if that's the wish of the board. So it's not, I'm not saying Manatee Glens isn't gonna be made whole. I'm just saying I needed recurring money, and that was to go back to
And,
the
and
sheriff.
we will have to vote on that when it comes forward, so we'll all have another chance. It'll, again, be a public meeting, so there'll be discussion about that when it does come, because all we've done now is tentatively set this in reserve, so we will have an opportunity. Jan, you wanted to say something?
I was just asking Mr. Hunsaker earlier, yeah, I could not sleep at night. You asked me if, what the change in the property value. It's 8.3% in value change and 14 million in tax. Just me being.
Oh, thank you.
picky.
8.3.
I said it
in
wrong.
Value, that
Right.
is what
The
the
increase.
average has been, the
The county,
increase,
yeah.
right? Not everybody's
Except
seen
for
that,
the
but that's an
island.
average
Right.
increase. And what was the amount of funding?
14 million in property tax
14 million
is
in
the
property
increase in
tax. So
tax.
this is
Extra.
good news. Again, it's
We need
painful
more.
when you have to pay for it, but it is good news that the values are rising.
Last thing, at our next meeting, which is what, September 22nd? At 6 o'clock here. Hopefully more people that are watching come. Also, since the healthcare money is in reserves, we don't have to determine at that point exactly where the money's going. So that's
Right,
still
not doing
sitting
our
in.
contracts.
That's what we've been saying. We said that this morning,
So
right.
that's still sitting there, not spent.
But at least it's not divvied up I mean, it's fragmented. But it could be if they don't just sign the contracts and we don't agree to whatever,
Okay.
or they don't agree. You're right.
All right. Anything else on this issue for right now?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
12-hour
I'm going
day.
to head and adjourn our public hearing. Thank you for being here.